All right, now that I have a campaign loaded with the DM's side of the equation here, it's time to sit down and figure out what kind of characters we want to play. And generally, for demonstration purposes, I'm going to stick with the close to the normal expected range of fighter, rogue, cleric, and magic user of some kind. And but I may introduce a bit of variation on some of those characters to showcase some of the features that really allow Fantasy Grounds to shine a little bit here. Um, so what I'm going to do first is cover the campaign setup component from a player perspective. There's not a whole lot that you as a player have to do. The 90% of the work is on the DM. You're literally there to enjoy the game and have fun and invest yourself into your character, that kind of thing. And you can actually see the dice tower on the bottom right of the screen, which we'll get to in a moment. But at the same time, the resources that you need as a player to utilize are not yet loaded. They're provided by the DM, but they're not yet loaded on your client. So what we can do initially is we can check that because we won't need to see this again after this section of the setup that we're going to do. If you click here into the module section, it's very similar to what the Dungeon Master had to do when they were activating all of the modules that needed to be loadable. And I really wish they would make it a little easier to expand on the windows here. Now, anyone who watched the Dungeon Master videos, the two previous videos, will notice that the number of modules that are being displayed here are far less than what you saw on the Dungeon Master side of things. And in fact, just one second here, I'm just opening up the modules on the DM side, so because I wanted to showcase something here. So on the player end, you don't have the ability to load or unload a particular module in the way of preventing it. So anyone who looked at the DM videos would have seen that when I was activating and deactivating modules, there was a little red X and a little green check mark that was next to him inside of an octagon. Octagon? I think so. Eight-sided thing. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, eight-sided. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, eight-sided. I can't count today. Yeah. Anyway, those don't show up on the player side. And the reason for that is you as a player don't get to choose whether you get to see or not see a particular module. Now I'm going to showcase something here. I'm just searching for the SRD. You'll see that the SRD in D&D Basic Rules functionality is currently here. Neither of those two need to be there because we have the Player's Handbook and we have the Dungeon Master's Guide, Player's Component, stuff like that. So this really doesn't need to be here. Neither does this Cursive Strat. So I'm going to clean this up a little bit. And this is really something that should have been done prior to the campaign being presented over, but I left it intentionally for the purposes of ensuring that you could see how this works. And you could see that that adjustment occurred on the fly. But it's always recommended that from a Dungeon Master side of things, you test connect to see what modules are available, and simply disable those that don't actually need to be presented out, because you don't necessarily want to have duplicated functionality being presented to the player. Oops, I don't need that. I clicked the wrong button. There we go. We don't need any other campaigns modules here. And all I'm doing is searching for those modules on the Dungeon Master side of things and making sure that they are... Oh, I do have Mordecai's. So do I have that loaded on Morden? No, I don't. So I'm going to load that on the Dungeon Master side. Anyway, you don't necessarily want to have other campaign modules loaded unless your party has already run through those particular modules. And there's a reason for that. Just one second here, getting rid of Annihilation there. Because some items that you may have given to them as a reward through loot, or you've created an item and it happened to be tied to a specific campaign that you had running at the time. If you drop the module from being accessible to the player, that item will no longer function. In fact, the player may actually get an error. I'm honestly unsure as to why that happens. I think the reference material sticks around. And there we go. And when the item is created, it always references back to that item. So what I tend to typically do, so that my players don't end up with a completely cluttered module list, because it will slow things down on their computer, especially anyone who's running a version running Fantasy Grounds on a computer that's a little bit under resourced. Although the Unity version seems to be running far smoother so far than the classic version did during connecting and whatnot. And I apologize if you hear scraping in the background. I'm actually rubbing my hands together while I do this, or while I talk, so I don't know why. You can't see it. But anyway. As I was saying, as you load modules on the player side, they can actually start to slow a computer down because they do take up resources if there's an extensive number of modules that have to be loaded. Now, I'm going to start loading the modules on the player side. And as you can see, it doesn't take overly long for the smaller supplements. This one's a bit larger. Volos and Xanthars. Now, the reason why I am loading these particular modules, and strictly these particular modules, is because there are some options that I want to make use of for some of the other races that are going to be applicable to select from. I typically base my campaigns out of the Forgotten Realms area, and a lot of the campaigns provide options to run it out of Eberron or Forgotten Realms, or I think it's Kryn for Dragonlance, if I'm not mistaken. So there's a couple of other locations that you can actually base your campaigns out of, but you have to do a little bit of work to make sure that the wording is generic enough to be able to do that. And the good news is most of the campaigns already have that work done in a lot of cases, but some of the older ones, not quite there yet. Okay, now I have all of the modules done, and from a player setup, outside of changing the color of the dice, you're pretty much done when it comes to dealing with the interface, and you're starting to be ready to deal with the actual particular creation of your characters. But there's one thing that you should always do, so you don't need to do any of those, and I will pop that open just for now. In the library section, there are buttons up here. Generally, by default, when you connect as a player, the button set you get is for playing. And you'll notice that on the right-hand side, where you've got character notes, image map, story, NPC, items, you don't see things like race, class, or backgrounds. That's because those are typically used when you're creating a character, and they're generally not required when you're going through a playing process, because you can link back to them directly from your character sheet. So it's not something that you have to have readily open as accessible buttons on this particular side of the screen. So when you're creating a character, you're going to want to make sure that you click this before you do anything. And what that does is it enables all of these items, which, by the way, you can independently enable on your own. You don't have to click this button. It's just a convenient subset, if you will. A GM will typically click on this. Players will typically click on this, except when they're creating PCs, they'll typically click on this. And if you really want to see everything, you just click the all button. But for the most part, generally clicking the PC buttons the PC create PC button will narrow down the button list to stuff that you need to be able to create your character and get that particular character going. Now, I'm going to warn you right now, I am not very good with character names. I tend to rely on internet-based random name generators, so I will probably go through the process of doing the same in this case so that I don't totally embarrass myself when it comes to names. But there are features that may be coming down the pipe to help with the character creation process. But there is a process that is generally required in order to properly create your character and then properly go through and link your stats into place and then apply certain things like your race, your background, your class in order to ensure that everything is linked appropriately, and everything is automatically calculated appropriately. So why don't we begin with that particular process? So the first thing that I'm going to do, this particular character is going to be a variant of the fighter class. So whether it's a barbarian or fighter, I really haven't decided. And you'll notice here that there are different copies of each of the individual classes here. And the reason for that, your basic supplement is the PHP Deluxe. And just clicking that link, as you can see, narrows it down to only the classes that are available in that particular book. And if you want to get back to all, you just click on that. Otherwise, interesting that it actually doesn't show you the rest of the modules here to be able to do that. Behavior change. Never even noticed that before. I'm not sure if that's with Unity or if that was the same way with Classic. But at the same time, each of these other modules also provides items and not necessarily items, but information around those classes that you can make use of. So, and it particularly comes down to your subclass. So, or your archetype is the proper terminology that I'm looking for there. And I'm just going to close this on the other side. All right. So, just as an FYI, the DM also gets to see the exact same thing here. And every character who is connected, every player who is connected to the DM server, they will each have an icon up here. And you will see all of those appear and show that they are connected. You can release it, or you can toggle AFK. So you can actually tell a DM, oh, I'm going AFK, rather than just go poof. And the DM's there going, it's your turn. Hello, it's your turn. At least they'll know that you're AFK. It'll actually set an AFK flag on your particular character on the DM screen. But for now, I think I'm just going to choose the basic fighter for this one. And I'm going to open this up and drag this off and set this to the side. And much like the DM's guide, all the information that you need to be able to create your class is going to be here. All the rules, all the links that you need to be able to get to equipment, the initial features that you're going to be loaded up with, things like that, they're all going to be there. But, as I said, there are a couple of other references here. And I'm just going to move that over to the side. So you'll see here, down at the bottom of this screen here, there are Marshal Archetypes. Well, there's going to be some different ones here. So there's the Champion, Battlemaster, and Eldritch Knight, which is probably the one I will choose in this case. Maybe the Battlemaster, I haven't decided yet. But there's also the Arcane Archer, Cavalier, and Samurai. Well, what does this one provide? This happens to provide the Purple Dragon Knight. Anyone who is a fan of the Forgotten Realms books will recognize the Purple Dragon name and emblem there. Well, there's no emblem here, but the actual name, because it is one of they're a protection. They protect the crown out of Cormyr, and they've been in quite a few books. If you've ever had to, I can't remember the king's name. Anyway, it was down here. Any book that was pretty close to Shadowdale, it also sort of rambled on into that general location in some cases. So we're going back to the mid 80s, 90s in this case for some of those books. That sounds kind of interesting, but I really don't think a Purple Dragon Knight is going to be out near where Neverwinter is, which is essentially the starting location for this particular campaign. I mean, I suppose I could swing it where that Purple Dragon Knight has been disavowed from the Cormyrian army or Cormyrian protection guilds or whatever it is, and as a result has made their way here, but I don't think I can personally swing that. So I'm just going to scratch that as an archetype selection. Samurai and Cavalier. Well, the Samurai, they're far to the west of where they usually are. So I highly doubt they would be anywhere in this area. And if you do have a Samurai that's in this particular area, they are going to be highly unique. They're going to be highly... everyone is going to be looking, oh, look at that, that's a Samurai. Those kinds of things. So you're going to draw attention to yourself. So, continuing on here, while I was attending to his needs, I took a few minutes to take a look at the different arcane or archetypes here, and I've decided that I'm going to make sure that I choose something that will allow me to become an Eldritch Knight. In this case, that generally means that it's not necessarily restricted to any particular race or anything like that, but to really gain the benefit of the highest levels of the Eldritch Knight class specialization. Generally, it's really only the human or the elvish races that can do so. Although I have heard of, which is kind of odd, a dwarvish Eldritch Knight before, but beyond that, it's the only time I've ever heard of any Eldritch Knight that was not human. Outside of, I suppose, the orc that's playing in my campaign, but that's another story. So I'm going to make sure that I choose someone that's going to be compatible with the Eldritch Knight here. Now, what I want to do is I want to look at some of the skills that I'm going to gain. So I'm going to gain these particular skills here. And my saving throws are going to be Strength and Constitution. That more or less implies that Strength is going to be my primary attribute or ability that I need to focus on and gain a high enough stat in. So hopefully I roll good. And we'll get to that in a moment. Okay, so I have selected the Eldritch Knight from the fighter option, so I'm going to stick with the stock one for there. Now, the race. There are a large number of races here. There's the defaults. They come with the player's handbook, and then there are some supplemental ones that come out of the Dungeon Master's Guide, Volos, which has a few, and whatnot, and they can be a little bit tricky in some cases to play. And there's Mordecai, who provides a couple of these. Elf, maybe. We shall see. And I think I'm going to make a Dragonborn Fighter. I think I'll go with that particular option. So what does a Dragonborn get? So I'm going to stretch this out, and I don't need the classes open anymore. All right. Draconian, so they get an ability score, which means your strength is going to be increased by 2, and your charisma is increased by 1. Now, this is generally where the alignment comes into play, so... most Dragonborn are good, but those at the time it can be variable. Okay, so generally a good alignment. And the reason why I'm selecting the Dragonborn in this case is because the Draconic Ancestry and the Breath Weapon and damage resistances can be a bit tricky to get configured and get set up properly. So that's kind of why I want to do this, because I can showcase how to actually get them configured. Now, the background is going to be the next thing that you want to think of in advance. And again, all this is going to come down to hoping that I get some decent rolls with the dice. All right, so let's see. I'm thinking Wanderer might be, or equivalent Outlander maybe. But an Outlander can be a little bit awkward in cities, and you're not really going to be dealing with cities that much. But what do they get for skills? So, where was I? I just saw that. Athletics and survival. Okay, so there's a conflict there. And generally, you kind of... It's not necessarily conflict in the sense that this is what you get when you choose the fighter. It's one of the things you can get. So when I drop in the fighter and I choose my skills, I want to make sure that I'm not going to choose something that's also going to appear on this particular list in survival. So this is a bit of double selection here. So now these ones you get, plain and simple. These ones you get to choose. So you don't want, when you're doing this, you don't want to actually choose survival and athletics when you're dropping your class into place, because it's going to be brought in when you want to, when you drop in the background into things here. So, just hang on a moment. My apologies for the interruption there again. So yeah, you don't want to choose skills when you drop the class in a place that your background is also going to potentially fill in. Now, I think Outlander is going to be a perfect one for this. A Hermit wouldn't make sense. And there are some here that are from the other supplements as well that you can definitely make use of. So as long as your DM has those supplements available. So I'm thinking this makes sense. Now, yes, this is more or less the standard Dragonborn Fighter type that you could get to it, although you could make a Ranger or you could make a Cleric, so on and so forth. So there's still some options that are available there. But I'm intentionally selecting the Fighter. I'm intentionally selecting the Dragonborn race, and I'm intentionally selecting the Outlander to showcase the issues you could potentially run into. And I do need him for the Wanderer functionality. So for showcasing what that, it doesn't really do anything different, but it can be useful in this particular campaign. All right, so let's see. Now now that I've chosen the race, the class, and the background that I want to play this particular character with, I now need to roll my my stats, my abilities. And there are a couple of ways that you can do this. And prior to the Unity version, you would generally do something like this, and then do something like this, and then have to manually figure out all of the values. Wow, those are actually some pretty good rolls. Holy smokes. So I'm going to keep that for the most part. Yeah, I suppose he could be a bit weird. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So as you can see, I've rolled 6 stats there. So what those stats actually become is you drop the lowest of the values. So the top one goes from 17 to 14. The next one goes from a 20 to 17. Next one goes to a 13. A 7. Oops, I skipped one. So we have a 12 in there. And the last one also goes to a 12. So I have a 14, a 17, a 12, a 13, a 7, and a 12. Now, as a fighter, strength and con are going to be your two highest stats, or best stats to go with. In this case, I am probably going to go with a strength of 14. So I'm going to update this to be a 14. A con of 17. I'm going to put the dexterity as the 13. Alright, he's going to be dumb as a post. And because he's going... Now, does Eldritch Knight require intelligence? Or does it require wisdom? So that's going to be the... something that I will need to know here. Okay, just one second. All right, so I found it. So intelligence is the spellcasting ability, which means he can't be dumb as a post. He can be not overly wise. So I will put the two 12s here. So I have my 14, my 13, my 17, the 12, the 7, and the 12. Overall, not an overly bad roll, and there's definitely a reason why I've done this. The Constitution is going to help him gain hit points over time. He's going to be able to resist things a little bit better, things like that. But his strength is a little on the low side right now. And you got to remember, he's going to get a +2 to his strength because of the Dragonborn race. He's also going to gain a +1 to charisma because of the race. So that will come up to a 16, and this will come up to a 13. And there may be some additional features or skills once we get up in levels that we can make use of, because you do gain, fighters do gain ability score increases more frequently than the other classes, specifically attribute increases or feats that they can choose from. And okay, so with that in mind, I am going to drop the race in place first. And the reason for that is because it sets all of these things into place. So you can see that my stats have been increased in both cases. I could have put the 14 here and gained an additional 2 points to give me a 19 strength, but I'm counting on getting through to the point where I now have my +2 ability increase at level 4 in order to be able to bring that up to an 18. And then I can make a decision at level 7, I think it is, or level 8, one of the two, to showcase an additional increase, or either add additional points to bring me up to 20, which, by the way, you can't exceed. Now, the thing that he's going to be hurt by is the fact that he has a passive perception of 8. He will see nothing. He can walk blindly into a trap, and that's how he should be roleplayed. He will just walk blindly forward. He's not wise. He's smart, but he's not wise. Sounds like somebody I know. Anyway. Okay, so that drops that into place. Next, I'm going to drop the class into place. And the reason for that is these don't generally adjust attributes. Sorry, that's the specialization. Where did there he is. These don't generally adjust attributes. No, those are the traits. But they sometimes can. And sometimes a class can do it as well. Ability score improvement. So that's the increase of the stats over time. All right. And I don't think they gain anything else. No. All right. So I'm going to drop the fighter into place, and that's going to make me choose my skills. And that's the reason why you want to do this first rather than the background. So these are all of the options. Now, this is a Dragonborn Outlander. He is probably going to be somewhat perceptive, although that's going to be a bit of a hypocritical selection to make here in this case. He's going to get the athletics. He's going to get the survival by default, and I have 2 more to choose from. Is it just 2 total? Yeah, 2 total. So let's see. Animal handling, not so much. Insight. Insight is a wisdom. Yep. Perception is also a wisdom. So this guy's going to rely for the most part on. He's going to be good with that, and he's going to be good with. Tough choice, intimidation or animal handling. For a backgrounder, I'm going to go with, or for an outlander rather, I'm think I'm going to go with animal handling. It'll be a bit of an odd mix, but it should help there. And now that the fighter class has been applied, I'm going to apply the background. And if you look at the skills, you will now see that athletics and survival have also been flagged with proficiencies. So he is proficient in both of those. So, what else is there? We still have to come up with a name, which we'll come to in here a moment. He does not have dark vision, so he did not gain any additional senses. He does have a breath weapon, and that is going to come into play when we start looking at the abilities and the actions tab. And he has a hit point rate of 13. And if you're not aware, 5th edition by default gives you your maximum amount of hit points to start off with. No longer do you have to worry about starting off with a character with 3 hit points or 4 hit points. I've done that, believe me, with 2nd edition, and holy crap, those campaigns were tough. But in this case, outside of the name, the portrait, and the token that I want to assign to him, we're pretty close to being done. So, with that in mind, I believe I have a... Nope. My system is still searching for the tokens on the DM side. So while that is doing that, I'm going to go and come up with a name, and I will be right back. Okay, so I have come up with a name, and as you can see, I've come up with Fairfarn Tail Rencan, and I would like to provide compliments to the fantasynamesgenerators.com, the moderators or owners of that particular server. They do a great job on being able to provide names, and I will provide a link down below in the description of the video. And has this thing finished loading images yet? No. I didn't think I had that many tokens on my system here, but apparently I do. So it is still in the process of searching. So while that is still going through and searching through all the available tokens, geez, I didn't think I had that many. Oh, wait. It may have just finished. Nope. Anyway, in fact, my DM side may have crashed on me. But we'll see. If we get kicked out, we'll just pick up where we left off. Alright, so let's see. Everything else has been set here. So now that that is done, one thing that'll be automatically done for you outside of the manual selection of the acrobat and animal handling selections that I made here is that when you drop the background in, anything that you have there will automatically be applied. So these will now become proficient, and athletics and survival are both there. So when you drop your class in, when you drop your race in, and when you drop the background in, all of these boxes will gain some additional, I don't need that open anymore, some additional things. Okay, so it does look like Fantasy Grounds itself is having a bit of a conniption fit here. Let me just check my system. Yeah, the amount of memory in use is quite significant for the number of tokens that are loaded there that it's searching through, so I think that might be a bug. So what I'm going to do is pause the video, reload everything, and then come back and hopefully pick up where we left off. Although I'll have to open up the Fighter, Outlander, Dragonborn sections again, but I will show you how easy that will actually be, so I'll be right back. Okay, so I am back, and as you can see, I haven't yet loaded up my the information around the race, the background, or anything like that. But all you do is you literally just click on this, and to get to your class, you just click on the little magnifying glass there and click there. Now I've got everything open up again. Now, my asset window has been searched through without it crashing this time. It did, in fact, crash. And to match the token that I have there, a little bit of a different color, but from the DM side, I'm going to apply this. Now, you'll notice that for some reason the token has disappeared here. I'm not sure why. But I'm going to just simply drop that onto there. Okay. So that is the token I have chosen, and I prefer top-downs myself. So, with that in mind, let's continue on to the ability section where we initially were. I'm going to extend this out a little bit further. So by default, and I'm going to start with the languages. By default, your character is going to get one or more languages, and you get to choose one as a player. And you may actually get to choose a couple, depending on the type of background you choose or the type of class you choose. But generally, you'll be able to choose one extra. And in this case, I'm thinking he would have run into some elves. So I'm going to get rid of that. Elvish would be the next language that I suspect he would have understood. Based on the background that I'm kind of thinking of for him. So, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to start looking at each of these particular features. And fighting style requires a bit of finesse here, so I think I'm going to have him take 2-weapon fighting. So generally I do this when I choose a particular subclass. I'm going to make sure that I choose that. Now, Second Wind is an ability. And this is an ability that you can actually link to your actions page. And that's it. That's as complicated as it gets. By ticking on this particular ability, once you've... there we go. So this is the action. You click that, you heal yourself, and then you have to wait until you have a short or long rest before you can use it again. And that's literally what you want to do next, is go through and read through these and see if there's anything here that would apply to anything that would be linkable. Now, Breath Weapon is definitely an ability. And this is the one that can be a bit problematic to deal with. So you'll see that it threw both of these under power. Now I'm going to go and put these under preparation. In fact, there we go. So I tend to organize these a little bit differently. So this is from the fighter ability, and you'll see what it did there. It created a new category. And this is from Dragonborn. And I try to organize things like that. And the reason I do that is that now I know exactly where my racial traits are. I know exactly where my class traits are going to be. And when I get spells, they will show up below or above, depending on the order of it. And weapons will automatically be shown up here. This way I can now literally just click this, and I can minimize whatever feature I'm not looking for, whatever category I'm not looking for. Except you can't do that for spell slots, and I'm not entirely certain why that does that, but it does. So with Dragonborn, okay, half on damage, so it has that, but it doesn't have the type, and I'm not entirely certain why. So this used to be quite tricky to go through and set up, so I might have to come back to this and when we actually get a little bit more into the campaign. I have been looking for some information on how to properly set the damage type. Damage, here we go. So the type. So this now comes down to the category of the breath weapon that you want to choose from. And it's associated to your draconic ancestry. So if you go to abilities, look for draconic ancestry, you can see here that your ancestry is listed. You can see how quickly it is to go through and get around when you know where everything is. So I selected red, which means he's going to be fire. So I'm going to do fire damage. That'll be the type of damage that he will do. Now, what should happen here is that I'm going to be doing 2d6 fire damage. Perfect. There should also be some damage resistance, and this is also a trait that you could potentially apply to your... Well, it wouldn't be so much of an action as it is an effect, but as you can see, it did go up here, and this would be Dragonborn as well. So as you can see, it's now grouped the two together. And preparation, damage resistance. So it's not giving me the ability to make the adjustment. So I'll have to build that as a custom effect. So I'm going to make note of that. Effect. And then we'll come back to that once I get into the section where I'm actually setting up all of the effects specific to that. So I will leave that there as a placeholder for that. And this is a 15-foot cone, and it is a dexterity save, so I should probably modify... So it's not a save is You just literally have to go through this till you get to, there you go. The dexterity. So it's not against a constitution save, it is a dexterity save in this particular case. So now what'll happen is when I attack a particular creature with the breath weapon, Fantasy Ground should automatically do a dexterity roll for that NPC or NPCs, because it's a 15-foot cone. It's an area of an effect attack for all of the affected creatures. And if they fail, they will take 2d6 fire damage. If they succeed, they will take half of 2d6 fire damage. And it will automatically go through and calculate that so that when you roll the damage, it will figure out who gets what. I love Fantasy Grounds for that. Whereas this, for the second wind, you will heal yourself 1d8 10 plus 1 hit points. And you'll see that this tag here denotes self. So that means that you will target yourself, execute the heal against yourself, and you're good to go. Excuse me, I seem to have gotten another frog in my throat. Okay, maybe it's all the cat hair around the house. Okay, so that one is now done. So what else is here? Alright, so I am going to be proficient in all armor and shields. Musical instrument, okay. Kind of funny to have a Dragonborn play a flute, but... or maybe a lute, we'll see. I haven't decided. And I get martial weapons as well. So now comes this inventory selection. For now, the race, when it comes to the racial selection, you're done. You don't need that tab anymore, but you're still going to want to hang on to this one, and this is the reason why here. You're going to still want to get to this equipment. Now, the other thing that the class page is going to have is it's going to have a series of tables. Now, fighters get 4th, 6th, and 8th. So yeah, so there's an ability score improvement in each one. Alright, so I can wear all armor and all shields. So what does it make sense is what it comes down to. I'm going to start with a weapon. Now I've chosen to go with 2 weapon fighting. Long-term thinking. So when it comes to the weapons, I will choose a martial weapon, a shield, or 2 martial weapons. So that means I could potentially choose 2 short swords, 1 long sword, 1 short sword. And you'll note the difference here. All I did was clicked on this little eye icon here, and it opened up the weapons table. And because of that, I now am looking at the equipment list of all the equipment that I can look at. Simple melee weapons typically don't include swords. It's like quarterstaff, stuff like that. So a martial weapon, I'm thinking it's versatile, but is it? Okay, so it is versatile. Now, versatile weapons mean you can use them one-handed or two-handed. So if you do use it two-handed, then you can actually do 1d10 hit points of damage. Actually, that's new. That didn't show in the old version, I don't think. Or if you're using it one-handed, you do 1d8. So I am going to choose a longsword. Now I'm going to go to the inventory section for this. So I'm going to choose a longsword and a short sword. And those will be the 2 weapons that he will have. And what will happen is on the actions page, it will automatically populate this section of the system here, or of the action section. Okay, next is armor. Now, is there anything over here I get from weapons? I get a staff, hunting trophy. So is there a staff here? No, that'll be into the equipment. And okay, hunting trap here. No, okay. Right. So I can now close this screen and go onto the armor page. Now I have the ability to take a chainmail or leather, longbow, and arrows. And I am proficient with martial weapons, which means I would be proficient in a longbow if I chose to go that route. It does not make sense for a fighter who's been out in the middle of nowhere, because that's the background that I'm going to be playing with, to have chainmail. Not yet anyway. So I'm going to choose the leather, longbow, and 20 arrows. So I do need to open up that weapons window again. Dang it. Alright, so I am going to drop the leather armor on here. Now, something that you may have noticed is that this was 11. It is now a 12, because that's what the armor class of leather armor is. AC is 11, and plus my dexterity, which is a +1, gives me 12. So by dropping that into there, it has automatically equipped it. By unequipping it, my AC has not changed, because for some reason this doesn't always pick that up. Okay, that might be a bug. And generally, if it's carried, yeah, interesting. Generally, that should change. So it doesn't always seem to change. Oh, that's because I'm doing the longsword. Let's do the actual armor. So it does change. Not a bug. That'd be a derp on my part. That'd be a stow derp. All right. So, and I'm going to make sure that it's equipped, but you'll also see that, not carried, his total encumbrance and how much weight I'm carrying drops. Now, if you're not if the DM isn't tracking encumbrance, that doesn't matter as to what's there. The weight, I think, still gets calculated, but I'm not sure if these fields go away or not. I've never actually run a campaign without encumbrance being tracked. All right, so let's go back to the weapons list. Let's grab a longbow, longsword, longbow. Okay, and I have 20 arrows, which will come out of the adventuring gear. Okay, so I have a bundle of 20 arrows. Boom. All right. What else do I get? I get a light crossbow and 20 bolts or 2 hand axes. I'm going to take the 2 hand axes because it doesn't make any sense for him to have a longbow and a crossbow. And you'll see here that this automatically incremented by 2. And I generally do that because it will sometime, yeah, see it's set up 2 separate hand axes. And I will tend to sometimes differentiate hand axe left, hand axe right. So once I get into actually setting up the inventory so that the location is going to be specific, so I might set that into the right hand, I might set this into the right hand, I might set this into the left hand, that kind of thing. Generally, it's just my way of organizing things. All right, so I think I'm finally done with the weapons gear. So I need 2 hand axes. Now, I also get a Dungeoneer's or an Explorer's pack. This is where the bulk of your equipment is going to come from that isn't necessarily designed for self-defense or combat. This is how you have survived. Explorer's pack makes a lot of sense for what this character's background is going to be versus the Dungeoneer's pack. So if you look here, when you apply this pack, a bunch of items are going to drop into it, and those items are included down here. So backpack, bedroll, mess kit, which is essentially your cooking utensils, a tinderbox, 10 torches, 10 days of rations, and a water skin. Also has 50 feet of hempen rope. Now they're fairly similar, but this one includes a hammer, a crowbar, 10 pitons, and a water skin. Oh, that one also carries a water skin. Okay. So really it's the hammer, 10 pitons, and the crowbar that are different here versus the bedroll, which this guy does not have apparently, the mess kit, or anything like that. To me, the Explorer's pack makes sense for this particular character. So I'm literally just going to drop that into there, and as you can see, boom. I now have a pile of equipment that I didn't have before. At the same time, before I close out the adventuring gear, so I think I'm done with, yes, I'm done with everything there. I need a hunting trap, a staff, and a trophy from an animal I have killed. So, there is a staff. Oop. I need a hunting trap. I believe they are down here in the general equipment. Hunting trap. So, did that drop in? No, it did not. So if you drop something into the screen below this particular section of the bar here, it will not drop onto the screen. So boom, there. And it doesn't really matter where you drop it on here, it will automatically hop into place. So hunting trap is now there. The trophy from an animal I've killed. Now, if I do a search for trophy here, you won't see any. And the reason for that is because it's literally something you yourself have to come up with to represent that particular background. So what am I going to do? I'm going to choose... okay, I think I know what I'm going to do. Now, you'll notice that there's no spot here to actually type something in. Well, there's a little bit of a trick. All you have to do is select one of the text fields there and just hit enter. It will create a new entry for you. Trophy bear claw. Now let's do a wolf's tooth. On necklace. And you'll see it's a little bit long word, or longer than what you the entry that you have there. Now, don't hit enter again, otherwise you're going to end up with another blank line. So you just move it to the next screen there. It probably weighs 1 ounce, or 0.01 of a pound. That's a heavy tooth. It was a big wolf. We'll just say it was a big wolf. Seriously, it was really big. All right. And what else? Set of traveler's clothes. So traveler's clothes, clothes, travelers. And these would be the clothes that you're actively wearing over top of your armor, as well as a belt pouch. They do have belt pouches here, I do believe. I think. Oh, okay. So, another item to add. Belt pouch, and this would be PP. Oh, sorry. Yeah. GP, EP, SB, and CP for copper. Oops, not CPO. So in this case, I got 10 gold pieces. All right. And you can see here, you can put like gems, information for gems, stuff like that into this line. All right. And for the most part, that's it. We're done. Except for the notes. Ah, it didn't save my name. Yeah, foo. All right, so I didn't even notice that when it crashed. I believe I chose ER Fern. TIALRENKN. All right. Okay, so notes. So he is male. His age. Now, if you're not sure, crap, we close that. So go back to here, open this up. If you're not sure on the ages, all you have to do is just read through the documentation here, and it will give you, typically it will give you some statistics about the Dragonborn races, or the human race, or the Elvish race. All right, so Dragonborn scales of iron hues, bronze color. Sometimes ranging scarlet, rust, gold, okay, they are strongly built, often standing close to 6.5 feet tall. So let's make him. Let's go 6'2". All right, weighing 300 pounds or more. He's a little bit on the light side due to his strength, so let's only give him 310 pounds. And do they say their hands are pretty very strong? They are not going to cover no clear calling life. They do not cover their age. So just 1 sec. I'm going to go do a little bit of research, see if I can track that information down. I will be right back. All right, so they generally reach adulthood at approximately the age of 15 and can live up to 80 years of age. So let's say he's traveled around a little bit, and we'll put him at 18 years of age. So he's a little bit into his adulthood. Now the alignments, if you're never sure where the alignments are or anything like that, and you don't have a local copy of the Player's Handbook available to you, or any book depending on the rule set that you're using, you can literally click here and go to reference material and expand that out. Searching here will show all of the pages that are associated with the word that you looked for. And generally, you can very quickly find what it is that you want. Countries dialect, what they're spend, good. All right, I'm going to choose chaotic good because that seems to be appropriate for the kind of player that I want to choose in this particular case. And all right, so we're not quite done yet. You'll notice that in the race, none of these are really there. Now, generally, you can fill these in as you see fit. If, however, you don't like some of the things that you're thinking of, or you generally have issues finding or thinking of things like that, there are options for you underneath the background. Because the background is going to generally dictate. Did that? Yeah, it did. Okay. Generally dictate what ideals your traits are, stuff like that, based on the history of your particular character. And this will apply to your history. So you can just simply select and go through these one by one. You can do a roll. And Fantasy Grounds does now have sound, by the way, so I didn't have the desktop sound enabled on the recording software, so it's not being played through there. It is being played in my headset, though. Okay, that makes sense for this particular character. So what you can actually do is just simply drag and drop that into place. You'll note how I did that. I literally just dragged from this chat window into there. And this is where I say this window can generally be considered the ledger of character creation all the way through to character death, or campaign completion. They hit level 20 and boom, they're gods. That kind of thing. Interesting. The ideals table seems to be empty. Is there anything actually there? There is. Interesting, it can't be displayed. Make the most effective. Okay. Yeah. Let's see what other options are there, seeing as I can't really. Stronger instrument to rule. Yeah, that's not really all that well. Yeah, that'll work. He's been out in the wildlife for quite a bit, so that would be his ideal. Bond. Okay, this one actually works. So hopefully the Smiteworks will fix that. I'm not sure why that was not being displayed, but hopefully it's just something simple. So bonds. I am the last of my tribe, and it is up to me to ensure their names enter legend. Now that would make a good legendary character. So I will choose that. And their flaw. What are they going to be flawed by? Ooh. That would be evilish. Now, see, that would make sense because of where he's been. Now, his appearance, he is going to be reddish in color, so coppery. And you can go in and fill this in the way that you want. And all of this is literally for your role-playing side of things. And sometimes a DM will go and pull information out of here and use that as like a side story for a particular character or anything along those lines. So, having said that, this is now done. And again, this log isn't really used for normal games, but it is used for Adventurers League games. If you're curious about that, I will post a link here. I've never actually personally run them, but I have seen references to them all over the place, and there are campaigns and modules associated with the Adventurers League available there. All right, so this is now mostly full. There is one thing I got to correct, is that we have 20 arrows. The hand axes, they can be generally used as either ranged or thrown. And that's the reason why there are 2 entries here. So you have 2 hand axes on you, so you can either throw it, or you can put one in each hand and make your attacks. Let's say your swords get knocked out of your hands, then you can pull out the 2 hand axes. So I wouldn't clear either one of those 2 out of there thinking, oh crap, it doubled up on the weapons. No, that's not how it worked. In this case, it just went through and created a ranged versus melee variant to it. When you expend ammunition, this is going to start counting up. So anytime you make an attack with this, it's going to start counting up. You will have to remember to collect your arrows up during a campaign. Most DMs will make you do that, and generally they will allow roughly half of the number of arrows that you shot off. So if you shot one, there's a 50-50 chance you might get it back, in my campaigns anyway. But if you shot off 4, chances are you're only going to get 2 back. So it does force you to purchase arrows again. And the hand axe is there. Again, if you throw them and you forget to pick them up, you're just going to lose them. You won't have them available to you. And that is one of the things that you'll note. There's a lot of dials here that you can actually just go through and deal with. And these 2 are melee weapons. That's what this represents. That means thrown, and this means ranged. And this is the damage. So when you make an attack, you literally just click this button. Oops. So I rolled a 15, plus 5 to my attack roll. I did 20, so I hit an armor class equivalent of 20. Now, it's not a single click. It's always a double click in this particular case. These are also double clicks. Well, except for that. And that is also not a double click. So your damage can be single clicks. Your attacks are generally double clicks. Although in this case, I think I got to go through and set things up. And it might be the save. So for some reason, it didn't choose the save ability. So I'm going to have to look into that for some reason. All right. So that's generally the cast. That is a single click. And if you hit, then you roll the damage, and away you go. And then this here is also single click. So for some reason, this is a double click. These are generally single clicks, and that can get a little bit confusing sometimes. I've had some players that have gone through and accidentally double cast a spell, and it's like, oh, did you really mean to do that? No, okay. Despite the fact that you can't really do it. But that is and there I go, clapping my hands again. That is the process of setting up a fighter, with one exception. We still have to figure out the damage resistance. And I'm going to pause just for a moment, refresh my memory on how to configure the effects, and then we'll come back and do this. So, okay, so it was actually fairly simple. I just had to fiddle around a little bit until I actually figured it out. So what you want to do is you want to right-click on the item that you want to add an action to. And there we go. This is the add action. And what that will do is give you different types. So whether it's a cast, damage, heal, or an actual effect. So in this case, it is an effect because it is a damage resistance. To add the resistance to fire, it's literally just something like this. And what that should do is prevent him from taking any fire damage. And we'll do a test here in a particular moment. I will throw some fire damage at him and see how that actually works. Once I've enabled once we get to the point of enabling the map and the campaign and stuff like that, so we're actually going through the party. I'm pretty certain he'll have fire thrown at him, so we'll check to make sure that I did this correct at around that point. Now, the one thing that you'll notice is that it doesn't expire, and it should be self is going to be the target that you want to make sure that you are selecting. This way, you're not going to be able to give the effect to another player because you can't. It's an innate ability that your own character has, and it doesn't expire, so there's no duration, and because it's always there, and you never expend it because it's always there. So when we get to the point where there's the combat tracker, I will be sure to show you how this comes into play. Okay, so that is how that goes through. And this, by the way, you can actually remove an item. So clicking that will delete an item. You can add a new item to this particular group. Things like that. Generally, you don't need that enabled, but it can sometimes be useful. And you'll notice that clicking this just minimizes the actual item. But when you go and switch to combat, your actions still appear. Okay? So it just allows you to show the window in short form. If you need to know what it is, you just expand it, and it will show you. And that's literally as complicated as it is. So that was one of the trickier parts that I wanted to make sure that you were aware of how this particular process worked. It's kind of funny that they don't add that into here as a side effect because it's your racial trait that gives you that, but I suppose a separate ability makes sense. Okay, so that is how you set up a fighter, or in this case, a Dragonborn Fighter.